awesome diagram of the life of Richard Feynman, entitled, "What Would Richard Feynman Do?" As you see, is there a woman around? If yes, chase skirt. If no, is there an interesting physics problem around? If yes, win the Nobel Prize. If no, is there a bongo around? Which there's obviously always a bongo around. So, yes, and play. A man who plays the bongos, helped uncover the mystery of the Challenger disaster, worked on the Manhattan Project, and won the Nobel Prize. Could you find a more interesting and prestigious person than Richard Feynman? Everyone always thinks of the life of a physicist as people spent countless nights in the libraries of basements, doing math problems that are pages and pages long. When I was at Penn State, I actually had an experience with a professor of astronomy who actually said that in order to be an astronomer, you have to love equations more than your own spouse. Richard Feynman certainly did not fit this mold, but he is certainly among the brightest and best physicists that ever lived. There's obviously many other great physicists that we know of: Maxwell, Einstein, all these other great men we learned about in history class. But as a physics major myself, I find in order to discuss this man, there's no reason to discuss quantum electrodynamics, the tau theta contradiction, or anything else that he worked on throughout his life. Because he was much more than a great physicist. He had a great ability for out-of-the-box thinking, dealing with people, and an amazing reputation throughout the science world. The strange way that his mind worked is a good way to start to discover how he became such a great man. He saw things in a different light than normal people. One of his friends was a great artist, and he held up a flower to him and said, "Since I'm an artist, only I can understand the beauty of this flower." To which he responded, "That's not true, because I understand things at a cellular level. I understand that the actions of life, and I can see the evolution of colors in this flower. And I can understand the philosophical meaning, which implies, does this aesthetic sense of the flower exist in lower forms of life, not just in humans?" There was also a point during the Challenger disaster hearings where he got fed up with vague debating and people just going on and on with no progress. He made a quick demonstration by dipping one of the O-rings into a bath of ice water, which quickly solved the whole debacle and ended the meeting. His outstanding way of thinking gave him the ability to deal with people in a way that allowed him to succeed. He had a way of dealing with people that came from his father. Another example is a man once asked him if he knew the name of a bird. His father once told him that knowing the name of a bird isn't really important, as long as you can observe it and realize what it's doing. A keen eye for observation is more important than knowing the name of the bird. It is also said that he is very good with women. He is a great worker in groups, which is very necessary for a prestigious scientist. And he was also able to care for his wife while she was dying of tuberculosis while he was working on the Manhattan Project. Also during the time of his life, mainly during the 60s when he was applying for school, he was a Jew, which was very difficult to get around in this world. He was able to get into MIT and finagle his way into grad school at Princeton. His extraordinary character traits are the things which allowed him to be incredibly successful and achieve things few others have done. He was appointed to many positions, including the Professor of Theoretical Physics at Cornell, Professor of Theoretical Physics at the California Institute of Technology, and the Richard Chase Tolman Professor of Theoretical Physics at the California Institute of Technology, which is the highest honor for physics at that school. He was also awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1965 for his work on quantum electrodynamics. There was also many societies he was elected to: the American Physical Society, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and the National Academy of Science. He was also a fellow of the Royal Society of London, which is something very few people have ever done if you don't actually live in Europe. Lastly, I would like to discuss a series of lectures he gave, which have given him worldwide renown and credibility as one of the greatest scientists ever. His lectures on physics were dedicated to presenting his mind-boggling discoveries, which very few of us will ever understand, to the general public in a way which we can understand. Here is an example.
When you see something, you see only the light or you see the thing you're looking at. It's one of those dopey philosophical things that an ordinary person has no difficulty with. Even the most profound philosopher, when sitting eating his dinner, has many difficulties making out that what he looks at perhaps might be only the light from the steak, but it still implies the existence of the steak, which he's able to lift by the fork to his mouth. The fork.
As you can see, he was very witty. He liked to keep his audience captivated with funny things, making fun of people. He's a very intriguing character, and his natural brilliance makes him a very interesting man. He's given us some of the breakthroughs in modern physics that helped build some of the technology we use every day. Some people may ask, what has quantum physics or astronomy ever given us? Well, just to name a few, anything involving satellites, GPS, computers, telephones, they would not have existed without some of his breakthroughs. And as is the case for everyone in this room, including me, we'll probably very likely never understand any of the discoveries he ever made. But the important thing is that he was one of the greatest and brightest physicists of all time, and he will never be forgotten for his dashing charm.